Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Theo. Today I'm going to be rating and reviewing all the books that I've read in 2022. So growing up, I was a huge reader, and then I kind of stopped, and then COVID started and I was reading again a lot. And then I went back to college, and then I kind of stopped, and I wasn't reading like at all because I was just so busy with other things and I just wouldn't put time for it. And then this summer, me and my friends were coming back from Costa Rica, and we were at the Miami airport, and I was like, you know what, like I kind of want to read. So I went to a bookstore at the Miami airport, and I got Ugly Love and Verity by Colleen Hoover, and those two books got me back into reading. And since June, I've read, let me count it in my dandy little bookmark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 books. So in 6 months, I read 14 books, which, I mean, I know people that have read like 70 books this year or like 35, and I'm like, props to you, because in 6 months, that means I was reading like an average of 2 books a month. And my goal for 2023 is actually, I told my mom today, I was like, my goal is to read 50 books. And she was like, Miss Girl, she was like, with what time? And I was like, oh no, we're gonna do it though. So that's my goal for 2023. Probably won't happen. But I'm gonna, my bookmark has fallen out and broken so many times that the order is not in the order that I read them. But I'm gonna review all of them. The first one and the last one are correct. So the rest of them, they're just kind of all over the place. So I'm gonna review them and tell you my thoughts on every single one of them. And because I am home in Florida right now, I don't have the books with me. Back in my apartment in New York, I have like a shelf with like all the books that like I've read, and then like the ones I'm going to read. So I don't have those, so I'll just put handy dandy little images on the screen of the books. So the first book that I read was Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, and I read that book. I basically finished it on the flight. I think I had like 5 chapters left, and then the next morning I was Ubering to a work event, and I finished it on the Uber because it was so good. I rated the book a 9. I think that was the perfect book for me to get back into reading. And basically the synopsis is that this girl falls in love with the best friend of her brother, and he's a pilot. So, but they're kind of like, they're like friends with benefits kind of thing. And then they're like, should we be together? Should we not be together? Like that sort of kind of thing. So if you want to find out, it's a great book. I loved it. I was obsessed with it. It was fantastic. Then the next book is Verity. It's also by Colleen Hoover. And I know the people that have read it were always like, oh my gosh, I don't even remember what it was. It was like, do you believe like the journal entries or like the manuscript, or do you believe like the truth, or not the truth, but like what they're living? So it's always like, oh my gosh, like whose side are you on? Whose side are you on? I rated Verity an 8. I thought it was a great book, but it's a suspense / romance book, and I thought it was very good. But at some points I was like, okay, move on with it. And it was very good. I loved it. I can't give you my thoughts because I don't want to spoil the book, but if you read the extra chapter that Colleen released, I was expecting more. I was expecting answers, and I didn't get them. It just kind of left you hanging. I mean, I kind of did, because the whole time I was like, what if it's neither of the women that are crazy, but what if it's Jeremy that is crazy? And then the extra chapter, and I was like, is she confirming everything that I was thinking? I was like, or is this woman? It's a fantastic book. I recommend it. But Ugly Love just has like a hold on me that I think that that's why I rated it higher than Verity. But Verity was very, very good. Then another book that I read was NYPD 3. And me being the dumb person that I am, during COVID, I went to Target, and I love like, it was during my Criminal Minds era. So I was like, I need thrillers, I need crime, I need this, I need that. And I got it. And then I was like, they're talking about things that like they haven't mentioned before. Like, this doesn't make any sense. I found out that it was a series, and I read the last book first. So then I re-got all the books, and I started reading them from the beginning. And then, like I said, me being the dumb person that I am, I read 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. So I missed 3. So then I had to read 3, and I was like, oh, like I can't like start something and not finish it. So I went back to the middle, and I rated that an 8. It was very good. I don't remember a lot of it. I don't remember it at all, to be completely honest with you. I just know that those books are all completely good, but with those books, the crimes are kind of like, the plot is very similar. So I would always read one and then read another book and then go back to it. So it's very good. I recommend the whole series, but like I said, like, the plots are all very similar. It's NYPD Red is these New York cops that basically but they serve the elites of New York City. So basically, in my mind, I think of like Criminal Minds helping Gossip Girl. That's how I see it. So if that's the kind of combo that you like, very good. Recommend it. Fantastic. Then, of course, we have It Ends With Us, because you can't read Colleen Hoover books and not read It Ends With Us. And It Ends With Us, I thought was a very good book. I rated it an 8. It really does give you an insight of like abuse and, you know, all that different things in the minds of people, and how you go from saying like, why can't you just get out of it, like just leave, and then like being in the mind of someone that's going through it. And I thought that it was very good. Bawled my eyes out in it. I remember I was coming back from the Amalfi Coast, and I was finishing the book, and I was on the train, and I was just bawling, like sobbing. And my friend was like, Fio, are you crying? And my other friend sitting next to me, Sophia, she goes, yep, nope, you're done. She grabs my book, she's like, you're done reading. I was like, oh, I have one more chapter left, please, just let me read it. And I read it, and I was like, okay. I was like, okay, Jen started doing they're like, you're done reading. They're like, you're not reading the rest of this train ride. And I was like, okay, it was a fantastic book. The only part that, like, I mean, I see the whole point of it, because it was like her escape to her thoughts and to what she was going through since she was a little kid, was the letters to Ellen. Like, I thought they dragged on a little too long. That was literally my only, I guess you could say, like, complaint. But other than that, I thought it was a great book. Then if you read It Ends With Us, you have to read the sequel. It Starts With Us. That just came out. I believe it was in October of this year. And I thought the book was good. I rated it 7.5. It was not as good as the first book, but it felt kind of rushed to me. I don't know. It was good. I didn't cry in it, which is surprising because I thought I was going to. But it was basically a continuation of what happened in the first book. There's kind of like a love triangle in the first book, if you haven't read it, and it kind of continues on to the second one, maybe. And so at some points I was just like, okay, like, why are you waiting this long? Like, go. But then it felt like very sped up. So I was kind of like, but it was good. I still recommend it. If you're going to read the first one, you got to read the second one. Okay. Now this book, my friends always make fun of me because of the way I pronounce it, because apparently I don't pronounce the word right. But I hated the book anyway, so I guess I don't really care. But it's Where the Crawdads Sing. And I don't know if I'm saying it right, so if I'm not, you can laugh. Excuse me. I rated that book a 2. Oh my freaking gosh. When I tell you, I was so excited to read this book. Like, 'cause everyone was talking about it. My best friend Nina was saying that it's like her favorite book of all time. I was so excited. I saw it at a bookstore on the train station in the Amalfi Coast, and I was like, I need it. I'm getting it. I started reading it. Keep in mind, this summer, I was reading like a book, one per like 3-4 days. This book I blame this book for putting me on such a setback, because if I didn't read this book, I am convinced that I would have read more books this whole year. It took me like a week and a half, 2 weeks to read this book, because I was just so bored with it. So bored with it. I'm trying to be nice. I'm really trying to be nice. But it just felt like, those books that they give you in high school that you don't want to read, and you read it, and it's very boring, but you have to read it. But you actually look up the Sparks notes, because after like 10 chapters, you're like, there's no way I can survive this. That's what this book felt like. The only reason that I give it a 2 instead of a 0 is because the ending was good. The trial case at the end, that was good. But my friends saw the movie. I was like, I didn't enjoy the book. I'm not going to watch the movie. Like, there's no point. I'm not going to put myself through suffrage twice. Like, I'm not doing it. But my friends loved the movie, and my friends loved the book, but it just wasn't for me. I realized I didn't tell you the plot. The plot, if I remember it, I think when I blocked it out, it was this girl from, wasn't the swamps, but every time I say swamps, I think of Shrek. But basically the swamps, and her whole family kind of either like died or left, so she was kind of like on the fence of like fighting for herself and like surviving by herself. And then she was accused of murdering someone, and even though she like didn't live with civilization, and that's when it got good, like at the trial. Then this book will always, you know those books that like you read and you just can't stop thinking about and you're like, oh my freaking gosh. This was this book for me. Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. Oh my gosh. This book, 10 out of 10 off the bat. It's a story of this woman who has a child with her boyfriend, and her I don't want to spoil it, but her boyfriend passes away. And then she is in jail because she's accused of manslaughter. And she comes out and she basically wants to get her child back. And then she falls in love with another man. And she knows who the other man is. But then he finds out who she is. And it's just kind of like, oof. And it's basically the whole way that she lived and her whole relationships and who she was because she was trying to be a better person for the love of her life. That was her boyfriend that passed away. I bawled my eyes on this book. I read it in one day. I remember I didn't have anything. I was in Italy and I didn't have anything to do. And I was like, oh, let me start this book. And I laid in my bed reading it just for the whole entire day. And I remember my buddy Edwin came in and he was like, hey, Few, we're thinking of going, like, telling me about dinner plans. And he comes in, he goes, why are you're crying because of the mother effing book, aren't you? He was like, I'm done. He was like, we're going to dinner at this time. He's like, meet us outside when you're ready. And I was like, okay. It was a fantastic book. I kind of want to reread it, but not right now. I feel like it's been too soon. Maybe sometime in 2023 I'll read it again, but I recommend it to everyone. It's probably the best Colleen Hoover book I've read, and it is the best Colleen Hoover book I've read, and it's also one of the best books that I've read this whole entire year. So the next book that I read was November 9th, and I rated it a 7. It was good. I should really rate it like a 6. But it was good. It was kind of like, it felt very repetitive. It's the story of these two people that they fall in love, but one of them is moving away. So then they agree that every year on November 9th, they're going to meet up. So they have no contact whatsoever with each other. But then every year, like the year before, they're like, okay, November 9th, this place, this time, they'll travel to each other, like all this stuff. It was a good book, but it just kind of felt repetitive. And I felt like for the majority of the book, the storyline really wasn't going anywhere. Like, it was just like the same argument every year, the same conversation every year. Like, oh, I love you, but we can't be together. Oh no, I don't want to be with you. Oh, like it was just very repetitive. This book I read right after I read November 9th, which is called Funny You Should Ask. I don't remember the author, and I've realized I've been saying the author for a lot of these books, so oopsie daisies. But I remember my friend Nina, when I was going to San Diego, she gave it to me. She was like, read this book. Or before I went to San Diego to visit her, she gave it to me. And then I finished it in San Diego. Basically, I think it's like the celebrity and this like interview person, they like knew each other before he was famous, and then he wants to do like an interview, but he like specifically asks for her. So they're kind of like falling in love again. I think that's the plot of the book. Something along those lines. I just know that it was very, very similar to November 9th, and I didn't know it was going to be. So I didn't enjoy reading it right after because I felt like I was kind of reading like the same plot, and for that reason I gave it a 6.5. Another book I read this summer, I think I actually read it at the beginning of the summer. It's called Heartbones, also by Colleen Hoover, and also Nina gave it to me. She told me it was cute, like little like love story, and it was. It's like a little like beach read kind of thing. This I gave the book a 6 just because if you've seen like the Summer I Turned Pretty, there's no love triangle, but it felt like a very like teenage, like 15-year-old kind of read. If you're 15, you should read it. I'm 21, so it felt very like teenage high schooly to me. And it's basically this girl, her mom passes away, so she has to go move in with her dad, who like she doesn't really have a relationship with, and she meets this boy on like one of like those ferry boats that goes to his beach house, like the dad's beach house, and then they like fall in love. She's like, I think she's like 16 or 17. And they fall in love, and then she finds out that, like, basically everything he's been telling her is a lie, and then she's like, ah. So then there's like problems, and like the cops are involved. I don't know why it took me so long to say that. It was a good book. I remember, like, I think I read it in like 2 days. It was, like I said, it was a quick read, but it just felt very like middle school, high school to me. So I was kind of like, but it was good. I fell in love with the character, the male character. Don't remember his name, but I loved him, even though he was a liar. Red flag. Know your worth. Then another book I read was, it's always the ones that I'm the most excited for that let me down. I saw this on the train, at the train bookstore in the Amalfi Coast, One Italian Summer, and I was so excited for it. I was literally so excited for it. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm spending my summer in Italy, like, and I was like, maybe I should read this now, but I was like, no, if I read it now in Italy, then I'm gonna get all upset because my summer's not gonna be as good as this book, getting in my own head. And then I read it. I rated it 2. It was, what do I have? Have I had this in my hair this whole time? Sorry, I don't know what I had in my hair. So I was like, I'm not gonna read this book because I don't want it to be better than My Italian Summer. So I waited until after, and when I was in San Diego again, Nina's mom's friend was telling me that she read the book and she loved it. She was like, it was a quick read, very cute, blah, blah, blah. I was bored out of my mind. It was, I think that all in, like in the first like 2 chapters, way too many characters were introduced. And it's basically about this woman who breaks off with her fiance and she goes to Italy to spend the summer there because her best friends are getting married. So she goes, and then there's just, I feel like in every chapter, like 5 characters were introduced. So it was just, for me personally, it was very hard to follow who was who, because I felt like usually books have like the 2 main characters and then like the sub characters. I felt like every single person in this book was a freaking main character, and there was like 25 of them, and it was just very hard to follow with like who was who. But and the plot just kind of felt repetitive again, like, oh, I'm heartbroken, what am I gonna do with my life? Oh, I like this guy. Oh, but my ex is texting. Like, it was just like that kind of thing. So I rated it 2. It was not good. Disappointed me. Could have done better, but I can't say My Italian Summer was better than the book. So my first thought was wrong. Good for me. So then this book, when I went to Paris, Nina and Giselle gave me 2 books that they're like, we don't want these, like, take it, they're good books. And this one is called In 5 Years. I rated this book an 8.5. It was a really good book. And the only reason I rated it an 8.5 is because it felt extremely rushed. Like, I don't know. Like, it was a very good book, but it's basically this woman, she's engaged to this man, to her love of her life, basically. And she goes to sleep one night after her engagement, and she wakes up 5 years later. And she wakes up, and she's not engaged to her husband anymore. She's engaged to another man. And she's very confused and all this different stuff. So then she goes back to reality, and she's like super confused. And then she's engaged for 5 years. Like, she still hasn't married her husband or her boyfriend, fiance person. And then her best friend's like, I need to introduce you to this guy that I've met. And it's the guy that she woke up with, where she was newly engaged to. And then she was like, oh my gosh. And then everything that like that happened like that day, like she like took in everything from like the apartment and like the walls and everything, like started coming like forward and forward and forward. And she was like petrified, because she was like, am I going to be engaged to my best friend's like the love of her life? Like, I'm just very confused. It was a whole thing. You have to read it to find out what happens. It was very good. But like I said, like it was like a good pace until maybe like halfway through it. And then it just felt like I was like, I didn't have time to process any of it. Like, it was just super rushed, but it was a very good book. Then this book, another Colleen Hoover book, I just finished reading it like 4 days ago. So I finished it, I started reading it during finals week, which was not very smart, so I kind of took a break, and then I finished it on my flight here to Florida. And it's called All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. I rated it a 6. I read it 4 days ago, and I can't remember the plot. Basically, this woman is engaged to this man, as they all are, and she goes to surprise him early, and turns out that he's cheating on her. And she found out that he was cheating on her because there was a man outside her apartment, and she was like, yo, who are you? And he was like, oh, my girlfriend's in there cheating on me. And she was like, no, my fiance's in there. And then she heard them, and she was like, oh. So then the book kind of goes from like then and now, then and now, then and now. And the guy that she bumped it, that like was like my girlfriend's and they're cheating on me, they ended up falling in love. Not like immediately, but like a couple months after they like bumped into each other, and they did. And then they ended up getting married. And it kind of goes in like the fast forward of like the now. They were having some like rough relationship issues, and then she was like always comparing it to how they used to be and like all this different stuff. So I thought it was a very beautiful book of how like marriage isn't always easy, and how you can't like hold grudges or like fully focus on yourself. I mean, I'm not married, so like I really wouldn't know, but like I don't know, I think it just gave an insight, I guess, of how like hard relationships can be. And I thought it was a good book. It was a 6. It wasn't great. It was good. Then the last book that I've read in 2022, holy freaking mother of gosh, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. My friend Giselle, I remember she read it in March in like 2 days, and she was like, I cannot put this book down. And I've been wanting to read it because it's all over TikTok. She told me, she was like, it's one of the best books I've read this year. I bought it on Black Friday. I brought it home with me. I read it yesterday in one day. It was fantastic. I was texting my best friend about it. I was like, you have to read this. I was like, it's absolutely like insane. I was like, it's such a good book. 10 out of 10. Like, I was like, if I could give it like a 12 out of 10, it's fantastic. It's basically, I picture Marilyn Monroe, because I give my little characters like faces, you know? So I picture Marilyn Monroe basically like about to die, and saying like, I want someone to write an autobiography about me, about how I became famous, why I married every single person that I did, and what each relationship was like. But on top of that, there's a huge major secret that nobody knows about except for my best friend. And wow, it was fantastic. I literally could not put it down like at all. And I told my mom when I started yesterday, I was like, my goal is to finish this by the end of today. She was like, okay. And then I was on like chapter like 45 out of 69. And I was like, Mom, I think I'm going to finish this today. She was like, no, you're going to. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And I did. And the last couple chapters had me crying. But it was just a fantastic book. Those are the 14 books that I read in 22. And I hope to do the same thing next year with a longer list, with more books, with more variety of authors. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my little book review, and see you next time.